Andrea Kimi Antonelli. His speed over the course of the couple of laps that he did manage to get in before he yeeted it into the barrier at Parabolica, worthy of mention. What did you make of that whole debacle and Liberty Media desperately trying to push Andrea Kimi Antonelli down all of our necks? And did you take from it what much of the F1 media did, that this dude absolutely has the pace to make it as a Hall of Famer in Formula One over the next couple of years?
I think he has the pace. I didn't think that because of what he did at Monza. I mean, what he did at Monza was put the car in the wall 10 minutes into FP1, and any speeds he had recorded at that point were irrelevant because half the field weren't even out of the pit lane. So I don't know what that was all about. I've said ever since Monaco this year, he is definitely a short corner driver. He's got a feel for that. And he's obviously got the manipulation factors in there to allow him to do that. So he's very good. And you can see that even when he's racing closely against a lot of the guys in F2, Behrman particularly, you could see how early he was going into most corners and how good he was. The only thing that matters is why he crashed the way he did, which basically comes under the heading of having no feel for the car whatsoever going into the Parabolica and going in miles too quickly. And that's a question mark in my mind, because any future Ayrton Senna stroke Max Verstappen stroke Lewis Hamilton should never be in a situation where they have no feel for the grip of the car, the feel of the car, especially at the beginning of FP1 when the track's still green. I mean, none of it looked good. And that's the only thing we should be talking about from FP1, Antonelli, is why he crashed like that. No, you can't look at speeds. I mean, there's a bit of talk out there, I think, on the internet about minimum speeds and how high his minimum speeds were. But that's normally a bad thing when you're looking at short corner drivers with great manipulation. Most of them have got very, very low minimum speeds. Max's minimum speeds have never been anything to write home about. So anybody who's eulogizing about Antonelli's high minimum speeds either doesn't know what they're looking at or is, I don't know, putting out a smokescreen of rubbish, because it doesn't make any sense at all. What you want is low minimum speeds in general, particularly around Monza. Anyway, getting back to the point, I think on that FP1, he was a victim of being an Italian in Italy, having his first proper outing, real proper outing in a race car, as distinct from just going out on a Friday or running one of the old cars or whatever it was. And it all went ahead to him. So it went to his head. So it wasn't very well managed, was it? He wasn't very well structured when he got in the car. Why did they have the soft tires on his car? I don't understand that either. I mean, the Carlos Reutemann rule of learning how to be quick in Formula One, absolutely always go out on the hardest tires you can when the track's green and let the track come to you, and then run the soft tire right at the end. You learn to drive because you've got no temptation then to want to overstress the car. You're just feeling the road all the time. So they put him on soft tires at the beginning of FP1. I know they were on Max and a few others, but that was for a different reason, because they were planning what tires they're going to run throughout the weekend. In terms of Antonelli, what was that all about? I just couldn't get that at all. I suppose somebody in a rather basic way said, oh, well, he's a rookie, let's give him as much grip as we can, which is about the worst thing you can do for a young Italian in Italy. So, all adds up to being no surprise that he went off. I do think he has an abnormally great talent, absolutely, for sure. You can see that in the softness of his entries and his early turn in and the way he gets the car rotated. And I just hope that he's properly managed and they bring that out in him, because when he went off, actually on the corner where he went off in the Parabolica, he didn't do any of the things I've just described. He was way over on the left in sort of Carlos Sainz territory, somewhere between Lecco and the Swiss border, and leaning on the car like this, going in, obviously too quickly anyway, and with no ability, therefore, he hadn't set up any sort of stable platform from which to manipulate the car if there was any movement. And he just went straight off, sort of, as you do it. He went off like a very reflexy long corner break in a straight line merchant does, and that's not good. That wasn't good. So that, to me, because he's got so much raw talent, there's a warning sign there that it's not being correctly managed by Mercedes and they're not getting the best from him at the right rate at the right time. But wow, don't read too much into minimum speeds. This is something that's very misleading in the graphics they put up there, and there was a lot of talk about all that. And if his minimum speeds were high, then that's the reason he went off. in my
Well,
opinion. And somebody at Mercedes should have been saying, whoa, hang on, his minimum speeds are too high here. Bring him in or put him on some hard tires or whatever, because that's a warning sign when you see that. Because all that means is he's going in late and getting the power on early and leaving absolutely no ability, no time for manipulating the car in the way a Max does or a Lewis does. And it's
wow.
astonishing, isn't it, really? Because he's got Lewis there to look at. He's had Lewis there to look at for what, at least a year, if not more, pretty closely, more than you or I are able to look
Mm,
at Lewis as what he's doing and maybe chat to him periodically. And I can't imagine Lewis would have been particularly helpful in terms of giving away a lot of
mm,
stuff. And anyway, as I've said before, a Lewis or a Max doesn't really describe what they're doing anyway. They just get in
true.
and drive the car. But you'd
Yeah.
think Antonelli would have learned a little bit from that, but I guess obviously not, is the other message I would get from that shunt. He obviously hasn't been learning anything from Lewis at all. He's probably been looking at George's stuff. And he had, but it doesn't look as if he's a George Russell type driver. George is very, very at and center in the way he drives, in my opinion. And Antonelli is more in the Lewis mold, more, as I said, short corners.
Yeah.
But then if Antonelli tries to look at what George is doing, it's only going to confuse him. And I presume they know all that at Mercedes. They must do, because they're masters of the universe, are they not?
Brilliant, Mr. Windsor. I've never seen a more coordinated PR drive around a single driver. The contrast optically was stark when you've got Lewis Hamilton on one side of the garage, set to join the Tifosi next year, 7-time champion, absolutely going to be on the Mount Rushmore of Formula One by the time he finishes. No one taking pictures around him. Kimi Antonelli on the other side of the garage. It looked like the world's press and media were in attendance around that, and I think that his lap was a function of that, Peter. I feel like,
Oh, probably was. I mean, that's a
100%.
function of, it's a function of just, I got to go for it. And wow, I'm really quick. I'm purple. I was P1 after 5 minutes. Isn't
That
this
was
great?
what.
I mean, it's just pathetic. But are you telling me there were more cameras around him than there were around the real Kimi?
Well, yeah, Kimi did get a bit of press and media attention, didn't he? But I've
Real Kimi looked like a dude, didn't he? Just turning up in the white T-shirt, the black sunglasses. It just looked fabulous. I mean, that's how a racing driver should be, in my opinion. I don't say Antonelli stuff. It's ridiculous.
He's a proper one, is Kimi.
And all this talk about it, I should have to remind everybody, didn't Oliver Behrman pass him on the outside of Mirabeau in the Formula 2 race at Monaco this year? I don't remember Ayrton Senna getting passed on the outside of Mirabeau ever.
Yeah, he did.
And all I'm saying is, let's keep things calm, because the guy has a massive amount of talent. But if you start doing all this PR stuff, and I haven't been exposed to any of it because I don't really listen or watch any of it that comes out of the teams like that, so it doesn't worry me at all. But from what you're saying, there's been a lot of ridiculous focus. I'm assuming then that there's been as much focus around Leo Bonaroli because of what he did in the Formula 3 race. I mean, that was absolutely unbelievable. It's the last lap of the Drivers' Championship. The Drivers' Championship's in the balance, and he passes Christian Mansell on the inside of the parabolica to win the championship.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely superb. As it happened, I don't think he needed to do it, because poor old Gabriele Mini got disqualified. He finished second, but he got disqualified for the tires being under pressure. But what a move. And what I like about Leo, we should be talking about him, he doesn't have any affinity with any Formula One team, as far as I can make out at the moment. He probably will. They'll all probably start, oh, yeah, we should get this guy now. And that's probably why he's so good. And he drives so well. And he's just a low-key guy that gets out there and races hard. I love watching Leo drive. And there's a message there. He's not one of these ridiculous academy drivers. No. And I was talking to Luke Browning a year ago, who's very quick and very talented. And at that point, he was a McLaren academy driver. And he was wondering whether, to continue with McLaren or maybe go with Williams. And I was looking at him thinking, why is he worrying about that? If I was Luke Browning, I wouldn't have any affinity with any Formula One team. I would just get on and do my own thing and win as many races as I possibly can. These academies aren't going to help me. They're probably going to hurt me if you look at the track record of most of them.
Wow.
And sure enough, he went to Williams and he hasn't had a great year. I'm not saying it's all that. I mean, maybe his car, he was with High-Tech. It's a pretty good team. And I'm just saying these academy things and the way Mercedes have handled Antonelli is, well, it's just it's not worrying. It's just, it's just odd, really, that they should not be on top of those high minimum speeds and get him to be who he can really be, the guy with the low minimum speeds and
Yeah.
the fabulous transition mid corner and the great entries and exits. That's what he is. That's what Antonelli is, and he definitely has that talent. I'd put him right up there with certainly with Piastri in terms of that raw talent and that ability to rotate the car at the right moment. But he lost all that. He lost all of that in that 10 minutes of FP1. Mercedes allowed him to do that. That's the astonishing thing.
I think they set him up to do that directly, Peter, as a function of all of the aforementioned press and media. He's got the world of, like, every photographer and their grandma is outside of his garage before he leaves. They've done the bloody press tour. There's another video on Sky Sports F1 edited with beautiful Italian
I don't want to hear any more of this,
music.
Cameron. I'm starting to pass the sick bucket, please. When you talk about grandmas in the back of the garage, I've got to remember. I think it was '91 when Riccardo Patrese spun in the semi-wet and blew his chance of winning the Italian Grand Prix. And when he came back to the garage, his mum started whacking him over the head with an umbrella. That was brilliant. That's what grandmas, or mums, or grandmas should do in Italy.
Oh dear!
I hope Antonelli got a whack over the head with an umbrella too when he came back after he shined at the
It was
parabolic.
naughty, but I think it's Toto, Peter, as you alluded to. He deserves the whack over the head more than Kimi Antonelli, because by building it up this way, they've almost set up a dude who's just turned 18 years old that week. They've set him up for failure, right?
In fairness to Toto, I know he was a half reasonable racing driver. Didn't he finish third, I think, in a race in Bahrain once, a GT race or something? But, you don't expect Toto to be on top necessarily. He's got a lot of other things to worry about, like, cyber currency companies that go under and, internet security firms that have massive issues. No, he's got enough to worry about just keeping that team on the straight and narrow financially and everything else, without having to worry about the details of Antonelli's driving. That should be whoever's running the Mercedes Academy should be massively on top of that. And they're not. Quite clearly, they're not, and that's a big one. That's why I had a bit of a rant about academies in general, because I don't think they do actually spend a lot of time on the things that are really important, like one, raising money for the driver, and two, making sure you get the best from his talent, whether he's a long corner driver, short corner driver, whatever he is. You need to massage that talent in the correct direction, and they're not doing that with Antonelli, quite clearly, as we saw from the Parabolica.